Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. You know, by the time this episode comes out, we will have an official English language release of Girls Band Cry.
Hell yeah.
Which is leaving me with the question of, does it still count as airing this season, and can we just talk about that again?
I don't know what you're talking about. This is the first opportunity we will get to watch the highly anticipated Toei animation Girls Band anime Girls Band Cry, a show that has not existed prior to this week.
A lot of things getting official English releases lately.
Yeah, Aqua, we told everybody that we flew to Japan to watch it, which is clearly what we did. But yeah,
right,
it's weird
for us mortals.
Yeah, for the people.
I am highly anticipating seeing what that will be. Probably not that good. I mean, it's by the people who made Love Live.
Yeah. Well, it's weird they didn't say in what form it's going to be released. They just said August 13th it's coming, and did not say it's on Crunchyroll or like
set form is going to be shitty AI machine translated on some obscure streaming app that no one has with no marketing whatsoever.
Or they'll just put it on their YouTube channel or something.
That is highly likely.
Toei does like putting things on YouTube. That is true. Except Kamen Rider and Super Sentai.
Oh no, you get the first 2 episodes.
Oh right, yes.
Episodes of any given Kamen Rider on YouTube.
Well, that's a bigger legal mess, right? That whole situation. But anyway, well, I mean, I'm kind of joking about talking about Girls Band Cry again, but we'll at least check out the English production next time for sure.
Raise your skinny pinkies up like antennas up to heaven.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got a lot of other currently airing anime to talk about. And before we do that, let's introduce everybody. I'm Jel. I'm joined by Iro.
I'm still here. I'm not dead yet. People don't die unless they're killed.
We're going to talk about that in a second, but you're living the good life right now with all these old Type Moon things coming back to back. But we'll get to that in a moment. Time to
return to the old me.
Yeah. We're also joined by G.
So to relitigate Girls Band Cry ending discourse, since it is a current season show, fuck Hina. All my homies hate Hina.
Yeah. Don't you get it, She loved Diamond Dust as much as Nina does.
Nah, I don't. Nope. I don't care. She's just a bitch.
Yeah.
Nina still committed murder in our dreams.
I'm glad they didn't fully go in on redeeming her, but it was a little I would have preferred to just keep her the antagonist, but whatever. We can't litigate Girls Band Cry. Although, G, I know you missed our last episode and didn't get a chance to talk about it, but yeah, maybe next time. All right. And we are joined by Aqua.
Yeah. I'm also here. I'm also not dead yet, despite having died multiple times today because I am playing Elden Ring. I'm fashionably early to the party.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. So you're not even stalking the DLC.
No, I'm just playing regular ass Elden Ring. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
good video
Elden
game.
Ring.
Yep. That base game Elden Ring.
If you need
video game,
if you need some pro strats on how to cheese your way through as a magic user, let me know.
How to be a complete bastard.
I would caution merely because
it came back to bite me. Yeah. It came back to bite me in the ass in the DLC, which I still have not played much of yet.
It would not be inaccurate to say you and I, we kind of play similar. We kind of like to do the
strength of faith, paladin type
Yeah,
big heavy
specifically
weapon. Like,
a spell swordish kind of player,
Yeah.
right? At least until I picked up Dryleaf Arts and then I started,
Sure.
kung fuing my way through the lands between.
Yep.
But would you agree that it feels like the DLC almost seems like it was designed in a lab to fuck over pure magic casters?
Yeah, everything is so much more aggressive, or just has such bigger AoEs to their stuff that standing back will not save you.
It feels like certain bosses were specifically like programmed to like, if player starts casting Comet Azure, immediately close distance and use your most powerful melee attack to interrupt.
Yeah.
Very specifically, if you're casting that spell, yes, you are going to.
I mean, based on what I hear, From Software just want to make Sekiro over and over again, but they like feel compelled to at least allow for other play styles in most of the stuff they release.
Yeah. Well,
I would love for that to be true, Aqua. You have two Sekiro sickos here on the podcast, and I would say, I mean, Ira, would you say you are getting your Sekiro fix from Elden Ring in any like meaningful
No.
capacity?
yeah.
I'm not.
I
I
don't know
play.
about that
I
one.
play my Souls games fundamentally differently from how Sekiro forces me to play Sekiro.
Did you actually use Deflecting Hearts here much?
No.
Or, oh man,
Sorry,
everybody keeps sleeping on Deflecting Hearts here, man.
I just used Thrusting Shield when it was still good.
Look, man, parrying is hard.
Yeah, I just remember not putting I did not put a single point into my HP or my defense or any of my physical stats except a little bit of dex so I could use Moonveil like the cheap bastard that I am. And I was like,
you're using the Elon Musk build.
And I was just like, I'm gonna keep my build actually made sense. It actually made sense.
There's like a rhyme and reason to Gel's build.
I know what you're talking about. He put all of his points in intelligence because he's very smart.
Yeah, but I was like, I'm going to keep doing this until the game does not allow me to do it, and I made it through the entire game. And then once I played the DLC, I'm like, oh, there it is. I'm now being punished for my
news,
behavior.
Gel, is you have already been playing that game as a no-hit run for probably like the last 20 hours of the base game.
Yeah.
So really, nothing has changed in the DLC.
It's just a lot easier to not get hit when you kill the thing before it can move. That's the problem. But yes. Anyway, we got
when they're just going to parry.
Yeah, we can't keep talking about Elden Ring, but that's a pretty good video game. Nevertheless,
yeah, it's a pretty good video game, huh?
Speaking of pretty good video games,
I don't want to get into the RVN's video game debate, but yes, Iroh, as I mentioned, is on a hot streak with these old Type Moon releases.
Yeah, so last podcast, I talked
only
about
2 weeks ago, but
the
yes.
Tsukime remake, how I was writing a review for it, which is now up on the blog. You should read it. And in between that podcast and this podcast, they announced the release date for and released Fate's Stay Night Remastered. Unfortunately, they have patched out the randomizer mode.
I thought you were going to say, unfortunately, Fate's Stay Night is now woke.
Yeah, they turned King Arthur into a woman.
Yeah.
Fucked up.
They censored the essential sex scenes.
Fuck off. I don't even want to.
I can't believe they censored Tosaka's anus.
Damn.
It's going to be hard not to make that the title of this episode. But
that's how the fans chose to translate it.
King Arthur into a woman.
Anyway, yes, Iroh, sorry.
Yeah, Fate's Stay Night. It's out in English officially. It's
almost
been 20
as wild.
years. It's
almost. Is it more wild than Tsukihime Remake making it out?
Tsukihime is like a true blue remake.
Yeah, Tsukihime had so much work put into it, to fully remake it from the ground up. That I think putting that out made a certain amount of sense because it's nice and glossy and fancy. This is a remaster of the version they put on Nintendo So for the re-release they put on the PlayStation Vita a while ago, so it still looks like a fucking 2004 visual novel, right?
The
Like,
Vita, the most Nintendo of Sony consoles.
Yeah.
But so it's still that. It's still regular ass Fate Stay Night. It looks old because it is old. I am amazed that it's out. It's incredibly bizarre.
I feel like if they were going to put it out, they would have done it by now, right? I mean,
Well, they have now. But yes,
yeah, we got I don't know, Clannad 10 years ago. You would think they would have figured this out by now, but yeah.
I mean, in some regards, Type Moon's relationship with its international fan base has always kind of been
contentious, let's say.
Kind of fraught, yeah. It's you have some studios, and I mean, usually once you get to the AA or AAA quote unquote scale, obviously you kind of have to sell to an international market because that's how you make money. But I find that these smaller entities, I say smaller as if Fate Go doesn't exist, but it has never felt like... I feel like this is true for a lot of VN developers and publishers, right? They have never really... It never really feels like they have desired an international audience.
Maybe they don't understand that there's one there. I don't know. I mean, the other thing is
there was that somewhat notable case. I mean, this must have been 10 plus years ago at this point, where didn't some VN developer literally said VNs are made by the Japanese for the Japanese or something?
I think so. I mean,
recall straight up explicitly said we do not want Gaijin playing VNs.
Yeah,
I recall some other incident where people back when Manga Gamer and stuff were starting to bring over visual novels to the West. I believe there was some story they asked Type Moon if they could get the license to bring over Fate, and apparently they were basically laughed out of the room.
Yeah, it's weird to me because I was thinking about, I was trying to remember going back in time and remember the pre Fate Grand Order era. And Fate Stay Night was still a really big deal prior to that.
Right, but the thing is
even in even in the Western fan bases, I think we underestimate how popular the Dean anime was.
But still, in our circles, things like Ace Attorney and Zero Escape are also popular. Right. But they still had to struggle to bring every single one of these games.
Yeah, over. I guess I'm Fate Stay Night specifically had a pretty big impact
they brought over Fight Unlimited codes.
Yeah,
and then delisted it, but
I just kept thinking about all of the top 10 anime fight videos that would have something from Fate Stay Night, and probably some Garden of Sinners in there for the hipsters.
Sure.
And that was, I mean, it was a pretty big part of the anime zeitgeist, even prior to Fate Go.
Definitely.
And Fate Go kind of brought it to the real masses, but it's just it was. I mean, we talked about last time Tsukihime being a foundational work. Well, Fate Stay Night is I mean, that's the impact of that on anime since is
right. I mean,
immeasurable.
It is, you can easily make the argument even prior to Grand Order that Fate Stay Night is already an icon of the medium,
Absolutely.
It is in the anime pantheon.
Right.
I wonder if, from the perspective of Type Moon, maybe when you said that Manga Gamer tried to bring that over, I wonder if the origin of Fate Stay Night as an eroge had something to do with them feeling as if something like this is unmarketable to a Western audience.
But even, I guess it's but I can't even necessarily buy that answer because Type Moon themselves acknowledged that with the Rialta Nua release.
They've had the all age versions.
Yeah,
for
the all age version has outlasted.
But even though the all ages version is by all means the version of that game now, I wonder if it's just just we are the sheer fact that it is associated with something
I don't
like
know.
this could maybe make them think like, oh, those
I don't
sensitive
know.
guys
That was
just
that
do
was
not
always
understand.
yeah,
Like,
that was all. That was like that story related was like hearsay at best, right?
Yeah, and a
yeah.
lot of VNs get ported with that are actual still have sex scenes in them.
Plenty
But
have come out.
yeah,
Yes.
I
But
think
this
I
has
think
also
it's
been something that only really started 10 years ago with that Manga Gamer initiative, right?
well, that's why I'm like, I feel like this should have happened 10 years ago.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the I mean, there's also the like, it's one thing to get people to watch an anime, which people do a lot of, and it's another thing to get people to play, a hundreds of hours or how. I don't know,
Right.
Right.
I mean,
it's
let's be clear here.
Mm-hmm.
Iro is the only person present who has actually played the
Oh
original.
yeah! Every
visual
time I try
novel.
to get any of you to play the visual novel,
The rest of us are what some would call us secondaries.
Hey,
know.
disclaimer, I did read that Let's Play.
that doesn't count. I mean, as far as
Yeah,
our
buddy,
I tried to
alright.
get you to read the visual novel, and like maybe an hour in, you
Yeah.
quit and said the writing was terrible, and you didn't want to have anything to do with it ever again, guys. So
I've never actually played the visual novel, like,
Okay.
not even for
maybe that was it. I'm not sure.
it's fine. But no, point is, I was trying to ask if this is like, is this version, how like, how much effort did they put into like making it a proper new release that is up to contemporary standards?
Like in what way? Like
In terms of translation, in terms of quality of life,
They're-
features.
the quality, all the features that were in Tsukihime remake are in there from a menu standpoint. You can individually adjust to the voice levels for characters, for example.
Right,
Yeah,
Shiro is muted by default, which is
That's
extremely
just
funny.
incredibly funny. There's like
Because
there's
technically that's not his canon name, or I mean, it's not in the VN itself, right? Like technically, he was meant to be like
no, it's just
or not. My bad, not that, but it's like I mean, in the like.
No, Shiro is shown in like cuts in like CGs.
yeah. I don't know what you're trying to get at.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, as with any of these games, to some extent, he is a little self-insertish, right?
You were playing the
that's
game
what
from
I
his
mean.
perspective, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But at least like,
And
at
you are
least
making decisions in his name, basically.
right? But
yeah.
he is a distinct character with a distinct backstory and like an ideology that is sort of cemented for him.
Yes.
That the player does not decide.
Correct.
Right? So like,
Right.
Yeah,
but I mean, that's a
character. Like,
that's a common thing though in VNs though. If it's the point of view character though isn't going to be voiced, right? Like, because that's like it's.
I couldn't tell you, right?
But
But
anyway,
there's a flow chart, right? Like included. Whereas when I played the visual novel, what I had was a PDF of like the flow chart that had been like the data had been ripped out of the game, and somebody had assembled this flow chart. Right, and that's what I had.
I thought you were going to say like
all your Tiger Dojos.
I thought you were going to say like a game FAQs text file or something. But
no,
the
shitty PDF.
So,
yeah, so like there's all that stuff's in there. You know, you can fast forward, you can rewind, you can do all that. Like
right.
Because like what other?
You know what I was thinking of? That's what it was. A lot of the arrow scenes, they will do the thing of Shiro's eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of doing the blank, like the faceless protest.
There are like face full frontal like facing Shiro sprites in the game, right? Unlike the original Tsukihime did never show Shiki's face. And so it was notable when in one of the other ones where like he finally shows his face and it's just he's just a guy.
That's
just a guy, yeah.
But yeah. Quality of life wise, it's just a visual novel. There's not too much more you can put in there, I think.
Is the translation brand new or is it based on the fan translation? Yeah, okay.
I mean,
because there is precedent for like fan translations being used, like in Trails from Zero, Trails to Azure.
I feel
those
like
games
that
had a
takes
fan translator for a very long time, and they just officially released.
Yeah,
that,
I think that's
so.
the
Interesting.
exception to the rule. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's
I feel like
pretty
that
rare
takes
for
a
that to
very
happen.
particular kind of studio to be
Mhm.
okay with that. Which
Yeah.
I feel like historically Japanese studios and their legal teams have been famously
Yeah.
Right. I have not
difficult to work with in that regard.
I have not played like the whole thing, obviously, but I've played a few hours of it, and for a bit of that, I loaded up my fan translated copy and sort of checked them side by side. And I think the new translation is better
Right.
because it was done by professionals.
Professionals.
think-
Are there
I think-
any egregious changes?
Not so far.
Not that
but
like
I'm pretty
Noble
early.
Phantasms or something else.
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah, to
The
be
thing is,
fair,
like,
Iroh
enough
is
of the
only, like,
anime has been brought
Yeah.
over that like a lot of those terms are cemented.
Right.
I was gonna say, Ira, what are you talking about? How could it be better if it is the translation that forces us to address her as Altria?
I have not gone that far yet.
Okay.
I've been told that's the case, and I don't want to deal with it.
Oh, you
until
haven't
I-
even gotten to the famous scene where Saber
Spoilers.
appears. Yeah.
What?
Well,
Who
I don't
cares?
Even, I don't even know what
It's been
scene
around
you're
for-
talking about.
Yeah, what are you talking about, Joe?
the very famous shot with Shiro laying on the ground with Saber
Oh
standing there.
no,
Yeah.
I have not gotten to that point yet.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I think it's seems like a really solid translation so far. It reads a lot better. I think like
Yeah.
you see this a lot when comparing an official and a fan translation, where the official one like flows more naturally, reads a little better, takes a couple more liberties with the actual words that are being saying to better convey the meaning in another language, and a fan fan translated thing will like be more literal, or like will try to include almost every word somehow, right?
Mhm. No, that guy at a time like this.
Sure, yeah. Stuff
I mean,
like that.
I think that definitely depends, and
Right.
I don't even. I would go as far as say I don't even think that is necessarily a truism of translation. I can think of enough
Sure.
notable fan translations that I think are
You're right.
like much better than their official ones. Like
mean, the
I
thing
don't
is-
know if you've
It depends,
I don't-
right?
Translation
know
is
if you've ever-
ideology, and it
Right,
just
of
depends
course,
on
yes, but-
who you
Yeah.
put behind that computer. Like,
And I think it's going to be different too when you've got, again, the difference between translating a 20-minute anime episode and a
Or
hundreds of
manga
hours
manga
long
chapters
VN
and with
all just text.
Right. I think
at
with
some
something
point
like a
you're-
manga, you are going to get a higher level of fan translation than
With
like
that
a visual
much-
novel, which is basically a novel. Yeah, right.
Right,
Like,
with that much
sure,
text, you're bound to
yes.
get like
Yeah.
inconsistent quality and stuff, right? But
I
yeah.
just had to say my piece because like I gotta be real, man. The Dungeon Meshi and Golden Kamuy official translations
Yeah.
are pretty
Yeah.
dire.
I will.
Yeah.
I will
They are-
clasp hands with you over this one. Like
they
Ryu
are
and
not good
Ryu and
compared to
Cyclops.
the scanlations.
Yeah.
I think, in general, the Shueisha manga plus translations are kind of dull.
You have a
Like-
very short lead time for something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, that's.
But,
I suspect that is probably part of it. But
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't dive too much
Fate
into
Stay
manga
Night,
translations, but yes, Fate Stay Night.
it's
Go
back.
ahead, Ira.
Type Moon is like making their push into the West, like for reals, and it's very strange to be there. Right.
Next week, girls' work.
We cannot
No, I mean-
keep like saying this. It's like
I mean, more seriously, maybe not next week, but Eero. I mean,
they
we didn't
announced
even
Fate
mention.
Hollow Ataraxia.
Yes,
remaster,
the other big announcement.
which is I think far fewer people have played than Fate Stay Night.
Yes. I
And
feel
also,
like
it's
the
never
only-
done in anime, so it's
Yeah, I
more
feel-
interesting.
I feel like the only
release.
real legacy of Hollow Ataraxia is I don't know, that lady in the suit is cool, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people
The
are
battle on the
familiar
big
with
bridge, yeah.
with the Avenger character.
Are they? I think you might be surprised.
All right.
I
don't
think
know.
maybe people are more familiar. It would not surprise me if Avenger the Servant class is more well
Yes.
known
Yeah.
due to Fate Go.
Yeah,
than
But,
yeah.
but
Avenger
the amount of people who
character.
are going to know what that's based off of, I think, is going to
Right.
be pretty low.
So that is an interesting thing to also coming out. That is a little more game to it than Fate Stay Night because it's a time loop situation. And so it's
Yeah.
you have your day. It's like day one in the morning. Choose where you go, and where you go will have different scenes, right? And you're
Right.
trying to.
It's a little bit more an actual, like maybe life sim, dating sim kind of thing.
No.
But
No,
but
okay.
Pyro,
Just have the tree has way more branches
Right.
and keys and locks, right?
Iro, most importantly, is that the one you get to finally hook up with Ryder?
But they're gonna take that shit out, man. They're not gonna take out all. They're gonna take that stuff out.
There's
what
always
is
the
even
internet.
the point?
I know. Yeah. Well, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll have to get your full review, I guess. Although this is different because it's not like a remake, right?
It's not a remake. It is just Fate Stay Night.
Yeah,
it's just me replaying that visual novel for like the first time after however many years, right?
Yeah,
which has been interesting in its own way.
Yeah. See how your opinion has changed in 15 years or whatever. Yeah.
Go read my Tsukihime review.
Yeah, go check that out on theglorioblog.com and also on Iro's co-host at Iro.
All three of you too. Go check out my Tsukihime review.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, I will definitely find time to do that at some point.
I'm interested in hearing, because your if I can say that, your main thesis of the Tsukihime remake was like, it's refreshing how like old school and relatively simplistic this is. And I wonder,
sort of, yeah.
Well, simplistic as in, it is a urban fantasy story with these characters and this premise, and it is not yet on as grand a scale as modern type Moon stuff is. And I wonder if that applies to Fate Stay Night as well.
I mean, it's Fate Stay Night still for just Fate Stay Night. It's like it's a budget thing, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
All right. We got to move on because we have another big news item to talk about. The
evil has been defeated.
My Hero Academia ended.
It sure has.
Yep.
I don't know which one of you put in the notes, but we have in the notes "Rest in Piss MHA." So
that was me.
I take it the ending.
I don't disagree.
I can take it the ending was not very good, but I was also kind of expecting that at this point.
Rest in Plus Ultra.
I wish.
Minus Ultra.
So obviously, here's the thing, right? Like there really isn't any surprise here, right? Like My Hero Academia's ending being like steaming dog shit didn't come out of nowhere. It's not like My Hero Academia was like running on full cylinders up to this point.
This is a problem endemic to Shonen Jump, I feel.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So really, this is just another opportunity and or excuse to relitigate like the inherent issues of how Weekly Shonen Jump like run their manga, right? But
yeah,
I guess to kind of like briefly summarize it, just to kind of really get into like why this ending, I don't think this ending is just bad. Like, I think if I was more emotionally invested in My Hero Academia, I would be like kind of offended by like how badly this ending handles the themes of My Hero Academia. So basically, it's the big war arc, everybody's fighting, everybody's here, right? Classic shonen climax stuff, right? And Deku has to defeat Shigaraki, the main villain, once and for all. But like the whole kind of thematic through line of this fight, right, is that Deku fundamentally believes that being a hero is not just about defeating evil, it is about saving the damned. Right? Like, this has always kind of been the core of Deku's character, right? It is not enough to merely, like, beat up the bad guy. You must save
their soul.
Yes, exactly, right? And that's a theme I can get behind, to be sure, right? Like, it's kind of like the classic Superman thing, right? Like, Superman's not just Superman because, he can beat the piss out of Darkseid, but because, he's, rescuing cats out of trees and inspiring people to be their best selves and all that stuff, right? So TLDR, Deku does or attempts to do this by basically sacrificing One for All, right? The power that he has inherited from All Might that gives him his superpowers. It's very stupid and convoluted, but basically it's like, if I put One for All back into Shigaraki, who has inherited All for One,
they'll basically cancel each other out, right?
And then he'll be fine and good. And in a move that I think, again, I did not like My Hero Academia in this final stretch, but the way they handle like the climax of the fight kind of works for me in some ways, because the long and short of it is it doesn't work. Shigaraki basically like is quote unquote saved in the sense that like Deku like manages to like finally reach out to him, and they're able to like reach some sort of like emotional transparency with each other. And then Shigaraki's like, fuck this, I'm out, and would rather like perish of his wounds than allow himself to be pitied and saved by the heroes he despises, right? The idea being that despite Deku sacrificing everything to save this person would still rather like, you know, die on his feet, essentially. And so I think it kind of works. It's kind of like a bittersweet, like, like, you know, like blah, blah, blah. Like, you can't save everybody, but like, you know, that's what being a hero is about, right? And, you know, like, so, you know, then we get to the final chapter, right?
Like a long ass epilogue.
Oh, that was not the end. Okay.
No, we are doing.
Because I was gonna say, all right, because when you said that, I was like, all right, that's
epilogue.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because that part of it was like, all right, that's fine. Whatever. Right. Yeah.
As Iro just said, that is the problem. We are getting the classic shonen time skip epilogue.
Oh boy.
We are told 8 years have passed since the defeat of All for One. And
Pan is at the World Tournament.
This ending, like, man, it really makes Deku look like the most like pathetic, sad sack of shit of any like shonen protagonist I've ever seen in my life. So like, now that Deku has lost his powers, he has become a teacher at UA, the hero school he attended. He has sort of like retired into quite obscurity. People do not recognize him anymore. Nobody really knows the name Deku anymore. Let me be clear, despite the fact that he literally like defeated like their universe's equivalent of like Frieza or Cell,
the Demon Lord,
like,
right? As they kept making a big name
like,
of it
on TV. Like the world witnessed him do this.
I mean, it'd be one thing if it was like 50 years ago, but we're talking 8 years, right?
8 years, right? Yeah. And like, I don't know what it is. Like, I think Horikoshi was really trying to like communicate the theme of like the best possible thing that could happen to a hero is
to not be needed, right? Like,
is to not be needed. And I actually kind of like that in theory, right? Like, it's, you know, it echoes a lot of like what I think a lot of good superhero comics do, of like, you know, Superman would probably love to retire. Superman would probably love a world where he's not needed, right? And in some ways, that's kind of what Deku has quote unquote earned here. But they keep like harping on like how like kind of sad and lonely he's become. Like
all of his friends have abandoned him, basically, right?
Yeah. Like literally, he explicitly says he doesn't stay in touch with most of his friends anymore.
They're all too busy being heroes.
Yes, the rest of them have gone on to their glamorous lives as, you know, the heroes who like stopped Shigaraki, while Deku remains forgotten. Like even his like students don't really recognize him as like the guy. You know, it does the classic thing of he meets, you know, this young kid who dreams of being a hero to kind of, you know, do the mirror parallel with Deku when he met All Might, and this kid literally reacts to Deku being like, "Whoa, you're real?
You're still around?
Yeah, like, you're still around."
And I mean, like the obvious thing was right there, right? Like have it end with him giving his powers to this kid, like All Might did for him. Like,
right, to the next generation. And it's like, and so, like, it's just, like, again, it's like, maybe some of this stuff isn't...
Yeah, go ahead.
It's like, maybe some of this stuff isn't, like, that bad on paper, but, like, Horikoshi takes great pains to portray, like, how, like, kind of despondent and, like listless Deku feels as an adult, right? Like he repeatedly makes sure you understand that like Deku's current life, now that he's no longer a hero, is kind of pathetic and unenviable, and like it's not just enough to it's not enough that he could just simply retire, peacefully. We have to like really like turn the screws and be like, yeah, no, his life fucking sucks now.
Yeah, and like that goes against everything that the series has been
if
saying,
you're gonna
right?
open
or at least all the stuff that they were saying in
yeah.
the end, right? Yeah.
If you're gonna open your first chapter with "This is the story of how I became the greatest hero," you should follow up on that in the last episode,
right?
And the main issue I have with this is I don't even like need Deku to retire with all the money and bitches. Like that's not really what I'm asking.
Like have a satisfying normal life, right? Like yeah.
Because like the reason why this actually really bothers me, right, is because this whole time My Hero Academia's core message since Deku met All Might in Chapter 1 is that heroism could be inherent to anybody, right? That heroism is more about intent and action than necessarily like, the results you get, right? Like,
or about having superpowers, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? Like My Hero Academia's whole theme is like, even if you don't have powers, even if you're not the strongest, even if you're a nobody, you should still do the right thing. And so, for My Hero Academia to explicitly portray Deku's life as worse and more pathetic because he doesn't have powers anymore, like, it really sticks with me the wrong way, because they don't say that, oh no, now after Deku lost his powers, he devoted his efforts to volunteer work or like helping others. It's like, no, he just retired to an office job. I mean, he became a teacher, which is not quite the same, but it's like, it really
it's a lot of missed opportunity there
to have missed, and so there's all this happening, and you go, "Wow, that's kind of what a pathetic, sad ending for this manga." And then maybe even worse than all of that is that Horikoshi cannot even commit to this theming, because in the last 2 pages, All Might barges in and explains, actually, over the last 8 years, the rest of your friends were contributing money and time to researching and developing an Iron Man suit for you. You earned it, Deku. Here you go.
I didn't think it was going to get worse.
And then Deku becomes an Iron Man hero, and he joins his friends again, and he's shown to be happy and satisfied because now he's powerful again. He's not a fucking loser. He's not a loser anymore because now he has powers. Powers make you cool. Powers get you friends. Powers make you happy. And
wow, that got you so much worse at the end.
It's so bad.
So dumb. Just
also, I'm honestly surprised All Might is still alive. Like,
yeah, good point.
Yep.
But look, I mean, Horikoshi could not bring himself to kill off All Might. He instead had to kill off a bunch of named women instead.
Yes.
I mean, to kind of tie to that in some ways, like, Horikoshi is, like, no exaggeration, like, he is the modern Tite Kubo. Like,
I think the writing in parts of My Hero Academia is better than Bleach.
Yes, but I think the problems with My Hero Academia are almost identical.
The same problems, yes, absolutely.
To Bleach's problems of, like, he's a great character designer. He has, like, an aesthetic sensibility that lends itself well to spectacle, but, like, just seemingly doesn't really know what to do with his characters, and maybe never understood at all, like, the theme of the story he was writing.
Yeah.
Turns out another famous shonen mangaka is a great artist but a mediocre writer. Wow. Truly an unprecedented revelation.
And I mean,
like, go ahead, G.
To bring this all back, maybe Horikoshi, I mean, like, the first, like, half of My Hero Academia is pretty decent. So it's like, maybe he did have good ideas, and maybe he was a decent writer, but My Hero Academia became the next big thing. It became, you know, one of the most recognized and popular shonen in the magazine. And so what happens to it? It must continue, right? It must persist. Right. And I think that's kind of in a lot of ways is like really the core issue with a lot of the manga published in Weekly Shonen Jump is like they just cannot end, especially not on their own terms. I mean, I'm not out here like pretending, oh, you know, if Horikoshi could end My Hero Academia where he wanted, it would have been awesome. But like, I can't imagine the editorial pressure to keep the Golden Goose fed leads to good naturalistic writing.
I remember and this is not to say this manga was necessarily good. If you remember Bakuman,
Yes,
the manga about making manga for Shonen Jump, and like
yes.
a whole big plot point in that is that the one guy, like as part of his contract, said if I'm number one for 10 weeks in a row, I get to end any series in the magazine that I want.
Right.
I get to pick and choose, and he's set up as like the like rival, and then way later it's like, oh shit, he's been number one for 10 weeks. And he's like, good, I can end my manga when I'm on top and have the ending that I want. Because there was no way I was going to be allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, this is a thing, right? Like, I mean, you know, again, look, Bakuman's got a lot of problems.
Yeah,
but like, in some regards, like,
what I'm saying is like this sentiment is felt. Been bubbling, real. Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, it's why, like, Chainsaw Man Part 1 ending when it did was, like, considered kind of a surprise because...
Or Demon Slayer.
Right, because we were like, wow, I can't believe they let Fujimoto, like, end Chainsaw Man on his own terms. And then it turns out Part 2 happened, and, you know, well... I'm sure we'll get to that someday.
Shoutouts to Hirohiko Araki figuring out a way to get around this.
Yeah.
to
be allowed to end his story and continue it as long as
he wants it, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only other thing I kept seeing about the ending is people kept posting a panel with the mechanic lady. I don't know.
She's like, I mean, she shows up for like one panel, and you know, she's still like, probably like the third or fourth hottest character in My Hero Academia. So you know,
I think
who's the other ones aside from the bunny girl?
Oh, it's definitely Mirko, the bunny girl,
Lady Nagan.
I mean, that's for me. Like, I don't think she's like that popular with other people.
I could see that. Yep. Okay.
I think one of the other like really ridiculous things in that ending, from like I think 1 or 2 chapters before the end, is All Might is literally like they're discussing how maybe the hero ranking system is not so great.
Oh God! And right.
And All Might's like, shouldn't we get rid of like literally stack ranking the heroes like publicly? And is told, nah, people like that, so we're gonna keep doing it.
God,
like, what?
It's like that. Like, I mean, again, it's like don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but there are many things about My Hero Academia's ending that feel very steeped in like Japanese cultural sensibilities, right? Like, like it's a good thing that the hero like retires and becomes kind of a pathetic sad sack. It's a good thing that we enshrined the status quo. Like, like if I think about it, the villain's whole motivation was to upend the status quo because his motivation was that he felt that the whole hero system basically ruined his life. And so how does the ending respond to that? By maintaining the hero system.
There is no greater evil than challenging the status quo.
Yeah. Well... what a disappointment. Although again, something that we've been seeing, you know, the bar was already set very, very low over.
I mean, like, let us be clear. My Hero Academia has not been good for like at least 3 or 4 years.
I mean, I feel like you can pinpoint it at when he starts getting new powers.
Oh God, the whole fucking 7 powers thing.
All right.
I just feel like that's the pinpoint where you can be like, and it's downhill from here.
Yeah, I think we gotta move on, but it's
I guess the real Hero Academia was the friends we made along the way.
I feel like
he literally says that in like the penultimate page. He's like, and that's how we all became the greatest hero ever.
Oh God. Yeah, I do feel like if we went all the way back to everyone's initial excitement for it when it was first in the beginning, if you look at it that way, then it is kind of disappointing, right? But at this stage, not a surprise. All right. Well, I guess
I'm going to talk about new things.
We're 45 minutes in. We should probably start talking about some anime. Let's talk about a show that we have not talked about yet, because Aqua, I think you're the only one watching it.
Yes. Probably for the better. I don't know.
this. I don't know how you. Is it Makeine?
Makeine. Yes.
Yeah. Too many losing heroines. I feel like this is another one of the many shows this season that sounds like it has an awful premise, but actually isn't too bad. Is that?
I mean, kind of, yes. This is like what it's like a standard, light novel, high school rom-com kind of thing. But the idea is like, our main character like keeps bumping into girls who get rejected by the boy they are in love with. This is a show about the girls in the harem.
About the childhood friend who did not get picked.
Yes, exactly. Like the main girl has like a whole like hang up about how she is the childhood friend of her crush, but he was stolen by some new transfer student, and like all of the cliches. And it's like the thing is like this is one of those shows that like looks at that incredibly tiring genre and sort of tries to do a nod and a wink thing with it,
right.
But it is not strong enough in its own right to also not be the thing it is parodying.
I was about to say, like,
because
the
of course,
problem with something like this is,
yes,
you can gesture at the tropes all you like, but if you are still just using the tropes
exactly
completely
because like
unironically, then
you know where this is going. Like, it's a guy who keeps meeting these girls who lose their love triangle. Well, he's creating his own love triangle with all the losing girls, right? And it just doesn't help that this main character is just like this insufferable prick who like clearly only sees people around him as tropes. Like he will be like, oh, you're a tsundere, so obviously you're going to act like this, or like, this guy is the popular jock, so that obviously means that the bookish girl is going to want to hook up with him.
Oh,
and
God.
like,
so this is like the world God only knows, but worse.
Essentially, yes. I mean, it is like the protagonist is explicitly like a lover of light novels who like spots these tropes around him and comments on them, which results in like this kind of show, which I've just lost all sorts of patience with. Like, the thing with anime comedy is like, we often point out there's like a problem. Like, a wacky thing happens, and then a character will be like, "Oh, that's so wacky," and like, I find that even more annoying when the entire premise of the show is like, our main character is like, he's like the reasonable one, and all the girls around him are so wacky and irrational and bizarre. So whenever they do anything, like, you'll always be like, women, am I right? Like, not in those words explicitly, but that is sort of like the
sentiment,
sentiment that oozes from it. Like, and the thing is, yes. Why do I like this show?
Yeah, why? So yes, that all sounds actually awful. So like, why?
I
was
like real curious why this is on the
So
list.
why do I like the show? It's like, if you take the main dude out for a sec, like, the show would be way better if it was just about these girls bonding about like being losers and being like, hey, you know what? There's more to life than high school romance, right? Like, if you just took that guy out, it would be a great show. Now, I think it's a good show because this is a show that is like carried heavily by extremely strong production. Like, all of the elements of the production are really good. The animation is charming. The jokes land. They do a relatively good job balancing the scales, because I'm making it sound like it's all one-sided, but like they dunk on the main guy as well. Like,
okay,
like,
that
and
so long
there's
as
like,
I understand that,
right, and there's like a fun messiness to these characters, because even though the main character is an annoying piece of shit, like the girls, the losing heroines, they're all like pretty like fun, compelling characters. They are like they shuffle up to anime stereotypes, but it's always with like a more like empathetic kind of view, right? Like you will have for example, you will have the like shy, bookish girl who cannot form a complete sentence, but like she's also pretty sarcastic. Whenever she does say something, she has like interests and talents that are beyond that one specific character trait. And the fun thing is that it's also like the female characters, the girls, they also interact with each other. They have like relationships with each other. They have opinions about one another, so that their presence in the story does not revolve entirely around how do they interact with that like shitty dude that no one in their right mind would actually want to hang out with. And that they really managed to to play with that and do fun things with that. Like there's a like in the most recent episode, there's like a thing where, because they're in the literature club, and they're
Of
actually
course.
like, right, yes,
The
because
Do Nothing Club.
yeah, well, they actually do things like they in every episode they do mention how like they are all like aspiring writers and putting up like and like writing things and putting them on like fake AO3 or fake.
Is this why this dude just only thinks this dude has almost gotten all of his information from TV tropes or something?
Yes, and like, but like he gets the other characters right as well. So there's like a scene where the shy bookish girl tries to say something, but no one listens to her because she's shy and bookish, so she like writes it out on her phone, and then it's just like a solid minute of the characters discussing something else, but in every shot you can see her like holding up the phone into people's faces, waving it around while people continue to ignore her. And it's like that kind of like charming stuff where they sort of go above and beyond to sort of elevate this from the standard like anime rom-com. It's like a show. It's like a show that makes me think a lot, because like we are very quick to be like, oh, the source material for this is garbage, but the annotation makes it good, right? And it's an interesting show to watch from that perspective, because I do think there are interesting things there in terms of like there are good jokes, there are fun characters, there are interesting dynamics, but it is definitely something that is still very much like indebted to incredibly tired cliches that I just at this point I just do not think have any sort of redeeming value whatsoever. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
but I do keep watching it because it's like, yeah, it's sort of entertaining, like when they're not making high school romance drama into like the biggest deal in the universe, and as long as the main character shuts his stupid mouth, it's kind of fun.
I feel like that's a lot of caveats.
It's a lot of caveats,
Look,
absolutely. And I do
Aqua, I can't cast any stones on this one because I'm usually the one in the seat that you're presently in, defending
right.
some
It's like the thing
comedy
is like
that I like. So I get it. Like there's
I still have a slightly higher tolerance for like that kind of stuff than most people do, I think.
Yeah.
But it's like harder to put into words what makes it interesting. It's just a very good production, it's well done. Like the animation is creative, the artistic vision is fun. Like there's like at the end of the latest episode, for example, there's like a bit where like there's a rumor going around that one of the losing heroines may actually be dating the guy who rejected her. So that guy's actual girlfriend, who I'm going to call Takagi-san because she looks like Takagi-san, is like asks main dude and main girl, like, oh, you gotta help me, stalk him because he might be home wrecking. And then the final shot of the episode is them discovering that might actually be the case. And
Right.
it's like main character is wearing a shirt that says country on it.
Okay.
And like the characters are posed in such a way in the final shot that like the girlfriend, Takagi-san, is like blocking out the letters on his shirt so it only says NTR. And that's like, okay, yeah, sure.
Okay, that's pretty funny.
That is
that's pretty good.
An anime for the modern age.
Yes, and also all the endings are like covers of like good J-pop songs from the 2000s, which is pretty fun.
Wasn't Peter saying, we didn't get a chance to talk about it last time on the actual podcast, but wasn't Peter saying the Russian girl show had like a different ending?
Yes. I think the Russian girl show even does like old anime endings. I
think
they did like
Hara
Yukai.
Yeah, they did Hara Yukai for one of them. Yeah, it's wild. But anyway, all right. I get it.
If you like that kind of show,
yeah.
If you like the sort of like seishun love comedy, you could do a lot worse than this. Like,
I've been in your shoes on this one many times.
I mean,
I feel
you just have like these.
And it's hard to explain what makes.
And sometimes they just hit,
Yeah, it's hard to explain what makes one of these stick with you, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You just kind of.
Also, gotta say, excellent performances. Like the main cast are mostly like pretty rookie voice actors, but like there's a lot of like, to put it in internet terms, a lot of extreme gremlin energy coming from a lot of these girls.
Yeah,
lots of like dissonant screaming and making weird noises. So if you're into that kind of stuff in a non-sexual way, perhaps that might be a show worth checking out.
This is the year of the girl fail, so
yeah, like Rintosuka and Fate Stay Night.
Yeah. All right. So the other show, which we haven't talked about in a while, because I don't know if anybody else is still watching it other than you, Aqua.
I don't think so.
Shoushimin, the We Have Hyoka at Home show.
Yeah.
How's that been going?
God. This is an extremely bizarre show. Like, I watched this, and I'm like, this is a show made for such a specific audience that I'm wondering if there is any sort of market for it whatsoever, because this is the purest distillation of what we think of Hyoka as. It is mundane mysteries, but filtered to such a level of mundanity, but it is treated with the absolute most serious sort of attitude towards that stuff. Like, oh, we are looking for, the reason how this guy managed to make 4 cups of chocolate milk without turning on the sink. And we're going to spend an entire episode like running our different theories past one another, figuring out how this guy did this. And at no point does anyone acknowledge or realize how ridiculous this is. We're going to treat it as if it is the most serious thing in the universe. And like, I like to joke that this is a show made for autistic people. Because like, I don't know. I think like as someone on the spectrum, I can kind of relate to just the sheer dedication this show has to obsessing over incredibly minute, small things. And it is something that gives the characters, like, reason, that gives them energy. And you have to sort of be on the same frequency as they are. Otherwise, I don't see any reason why you would watch this.
It's like almost.
So, I mean, you are...
like...
Basically, yeah. So the idea is that our main character was kind of like a Sherlock Holmes guy in middle school. Yeah, he was like the guy if people needed were like wondering something, or they wanted something to be found out, they would go to him. But at some point, something happened that made him abandon that sort of lifestyle, and he's like, "Oh, no, I'm gonna be a normal guy now. I'm not going to do all that weird, obsessive, freakish stuff anymore. I'm just gonna become an ordinary person." But they keep dragging him back in every single episode. They entice him with a new mystery to solve, and that is, of course, when he truly flourishes as a person. And in the most recent episode 5, this is the mystery of the pastry that has mustard in it. So the idea is that the school newspaper club, which consists of 4 people, they found out recently that there is a new shop in town that serves a specific kind of pastry that is usually filled with jam. Now, there is a sort of like internet viral challenge associated with this pastry that you'll do like a Russian roulette kind of thing. Like you'll fill 3 of them with jam and 1 of them with mustard. And then, everyone tastes one, and know, the one who gets the mustard loses. So they did this, but the mystery is no one admitted that they got the one with mustard.
Oh, man.
And they spent the entire episode trying to figure out which one of these randos ate the pastry with mustard in it.
Who cares?
Who cares?
Well,
sorry, just like,
to what end? Shout out to Kakaguri and Death Macaroon, one of my favorite episodes of this podcast.
But that is like,
yes.
That is like the weird thing of like you just watch this and you think like, who cares? And they take this so seriously. It is so incredibly po-faced that I sort of have to admire, like, they did it. Like, there is no mistaken belief here. Like this is sincere. This is extremely sincere. This is like, oh hell yeah! I want to use my logic and reasoning to find out this kind of the answer to this kind of mundane question. And I think the show like really appeals to people who have that same sentiment, but it's such a niche sentiment that is like.
It seems to be working for you though.
So like, but is it getting into how like, for example, he wants to live ordinary life but just can't help himself, and like, he must manifest this in a quote unquote normal life by just finding the most inconsequential things to obsess over, like on purpose.
Like
I find into that, or
I find the meta plot more interesting than like the individual mysteries, which is just about like, oh, what drives this kid? What happened to him that made him want to be normal? Because like he lives in a world surrounded by weirdos. Like people are constantly like browbeating him into solving their shit, and like that's not normal. Like so what I'm interested in is for this show to be like to explore, what it means to be normal, and I think it reflects that well in like the main female character, who has a very similar deal going on. Like, oh, she was also a certain way in middle school, but then something happened that made her want to be normal, and to her that manifests into like, oh, I'm going to be a cute high school girl, so what do? I eat a lot of sweets. I'm completely obsessed with sweets. So in the first episode ends with her bike getting stolen, and as a result, like the sweets she had in her bicycle basket get destroyed. And the following episodes are all about finding out who stole the bike. That is the like big overarching mystery. Who stole the bike? Why did they steal the bike? Like, why did they need a bike at that certain point? And there's like this whole undercurrent of like Osanai, the girl, getting summoned to the guidance counselor's office because like, and this is like extremely Japanese high school, because the guidance counselor is like, oh, we saw your bike being spotted at a location where delinquents were hanging out, and your bike was involved in a robbery. And she tries to defend it by being like, yeah, my bike got stolen by some shithead who's using it to commit crimes. And in the third episode, like they legitimately seem to imply that Osada is going to like commit crimes to get her bike back and to like
Sure.
have revenge on these people who stole her bike and destroyed her precious sweets. So it's once again this like whole thing of like an incredibly mundane thing being treated like it's the end of the world, you know. And I think
Right.
like that's like her thing. It's like her thing is like, oh, she overreacts, she takes everything too seriously, and that is what she is trying to not do in order to become ordinary.
Yeah.
But
Well, it
I
seems
mean,
like
Was it like going anywhere?
that's the thing. Like we're 5 episodes in, and I'm just like sort of, you know, they should start dropping hints, you know, or at least like giving some sort of indication of where this is all going. And because at this point, like they're not even revealing things about the characters anymore with the mundane mysteries. Like I think a big thing that Hyoka had compared to this is that Hyoka had a cast of 4, whereas this show basically really only has like our main guy and then whichever like character of the week challenges him to
Mhm.
like solve a mystery. And there's like one dude who is always there as well, who's like the Watson. But like he's
Sure.
kind of boring. And then like the girl, half of the time she isn't even there when he's solving mysteries, which is like, yeah, she should get more screen
Hyoka
time.
really needed those 4.
Right,
That
whereas
group
with
of 4
Yoka you had the
characters.
4,
Yeah.
and at least if they were like doing like talking about mundane things, you at least learned about the characters and their like, you know, what they find
Dynamic.
important. What,
Yeah.
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 So like you can clearly see that this is a kind of prototype for what would eventually become Hyoka.
I thought this
And
came
like,
after Hyoka. Did I get that mixed up?
Yeah,
But
they're concurrent.
or they're I know they
Right,
were
they are like-
I know they overlapped, but I thought
Yeah,
Hyoka came
yeah.
first.
It did.
Yeah.
fair enough. Yeah, but like maybe this predates the bits of Hyoka where the other 2 characters become really prominent.
It
I don't
does.
know.
It does predate the school festival. arc of
Right,
Hyoka.
right.
Yeah.
But like the thing is, like, yeah, this is another one of those shows where it's like they're throwing a lot of effort into it. Like it's really like nicely and like directed quite nicely with like a lot of subdued, subtle, sort of clever cinematography and things like that.
Is it still letterboxed?
It is still letterboxed.
Going for
Like
the
whenever they
cinematic
do
feel.
like
Yeah.
like flashbacks, they like put the character like they do a really good job of like making a show that is mostly
Yeah.
talking, visually interesting, but
Yeah,
it is like at some
Yeah.
point something's gotta give. Like you can't just
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm very happy that this guy got this beautiful of an anime made out of his really specific hyperfixation. But I don't know if anyone shares it. You know,
I mean,
like,
again, you're watching it, right? So
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you're enjoying it to some extent. I hope,
Yeah.
but yeah, okay.
But
Well-
yeah, that's my my weird shows that aren't really good, but I still watch them segment.
Hey, now you know how I feel every week.
Welcome to the GLORIO chat.
Yeah, welcome to the GLORIO chat. All right, let's keep it moving here. Let's talk about Nier Automata version 1.1a, second
Yep.
season.
Still here.
Any fun, crazy, weird things that have diverged from the video game?
Not necessarily diverged, but I would say that the 2 most recent episodes are kind of definitely leaning into sort of what I think are the strengths of like an anime adaptation. It is kind of doing things that the game would not necessarily have the means to accomplish. The first of the 2 episodes from of recent kind of is a return to the A2 flashback, so kind of the for those familiar with the game, right, this is where A2 finds out that she has been betrayed by Yorha, that the machines are kind of running everything, right?
aka what, the Pearl Harbor descent, or
Yes.
aka the Your Hostage play, which is how I always think of it.
Right. And I guess the thing I was initially like, we already saw the A2 flashback, but the last time we did, we saw it through Lily's perspective, the leader of the resistance. And the kind of interesting thing that the A2, going back to the flashback again, but from A2's perspective, is we really get to see, like, because even if you know the basics of the events, right, that A2 teams up and her Yorha team up with the resistance to, like, destroy a machine life form server, only to find out that, like, it was all ordained, right? Like, by following A2's perspective, we kind of get, like, you know, it's very Yoko Taro, right? Like A2, or as she is known in the flashback, Unit 2 is very bubbly, right? She is very Genki. I want to be friends with everybody.
We must destroy her smile.
Yes. Yoko Taro is like, I want that smile obliterated.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, she is not. I mean, by their landing goes poorly. Turns out they originally sent like 18 of them, with only like 5 actually surviving, or 4. And you get a lot of really good gruesome shots of like Yorha ladies with their like skulls split open or their jaws torn off, like from the extremely poor landing they made, which makes A2 the default commander. Due to the rest of the command structure of the squad being wiped out. And, you know, you very much see a version of A2 that is, like, you know, trying her hardest to hold on to her humanity in spite of everything. You know, she insists on carrying the, like, injured and infirm androids that cannot walk on their own, you know, until they're, like, brutally murdered later. But, you know, she very much tries to save as many people as she can. And, you know, with every failure in the flashback, right? Like, a little bit more of her humanity is stripped away in the process. Kind of culminating in this, like, pretty great kind of moment at the end of the flashback where we finally... And this is where I think, like, this is really where I think an anime adaptation can shine where a video game could not. We actually see what occurs, you know, at the end of the mission. We see the betrayal itself, right? Where, like, you know, the machine life forms have taken over the bodies of her, like, dead teammates and is puppeting them around. So it's like, oh no, she has to fight her old teammates. But then the machine life form specifically reinstates the consciousness of her dead teammates whenever A2 lands an attack on them.
Thanks,
and
Yoko Taro.
So they're, like, suddenly brought back to life, only to be confused and in agonizing pain as A2 is hacking their body to pieces. It's some real Yoko Taro shit.
Yeah, it's really funny to me. Like, it's so.
Most Kamen Rider fans would call that the Kurogane Spanner special.
Because in the game, this whole sequence was basically visual novel, right? It was just text, and a stage play cannot have a lot of action necessarily to this extent, right?
Yeah, I don't think the impact of what you just described would come across in either of those mediums, right? Like, having it in animated form is going to be more effective.
Specifically because I think if you were to, like, show this moment in a video game, your two options are kind of either to make it playable or to make it a long cutscene. And neither is particularly appealing if you are a mid-budget sized video game.
Yeah.
And so in this regard, the anime can kind of afford to show it, right? Because it's not interactive, right? It doesn't need to, like, build a whole flashback level, right?
Right.
and so it kind of works a lot better, just seeing the moment to moment, like just it's really affecting in a way that like, yeah, like for better or worse, it kind of doesn't like rationally you read A2's flashback and you go, that's rough, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
seeing her like watch one of her like last remaining teammates like struggle to force a gun in her mouth because this is a better outcome than the other one is it hits a lot different.
Yeah.
And then the following episode, also in true Yoko Taro fashion, A2 wakes up in the machine village, and it's just a lot of wacky hijinks with the robot kids. They're
I'm sure that will all end well.
Yes.
By the end of this.
A2 is like severely damaged after the events of after killing 2B and then like the big machine tower rising to the sky, and so she's being nursed back to health in the machine village, and just A2 is just a little too tsundere, right? She can't, she's like, I don't need the help from no stinking machines, and then the machines are they're just Pascal's village. They're all just such nice, good, innocent, wholesome robot children.
Mm-hmm.
And they break through her icy exterior. And this is also mostly anime original because I think in the game A2 you kind of just wake up and then immediately it's like go do some fetch quests. Because I don't think anybody wants to watch fetch quests be animated, they instead kind of like instead the episode is kind of just a montage of A2 being nursed back to health, which includes the extremely funny image of A2 can't walk due to the damage she's taken, and so she's being wheeled around in like a cart while she's still like angrily swearing at the machines.
Yep.
It's pretty good. We also are formally introduced to Devila and Popula in Nier Automata, as they're the ones who nurse 9S back to health.
Right.
And everybody's favorite, Devila and Popula.
Yeah.
Did they play Song of the Ancients?
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's coming though, for sure.
Yes. And so you kind of get the, and so the anime kind of does the thing that, I mean, I think the game was also doing this, but the anime, because it is a directed, non-interactive medium, could kind of more like obviously framework the contrast between A2 and 9S after the event of 2B's death, where like A2 is, A2's life was ruined by the machines, right? Her life was destroyed by the machines. She has lost her ability to love, and spending time in Pascal's village is kind of slowly like reawakening the old A2, and conversely 9S is like,
completely falling apart.
Tragic descent into the littlest sicko boy that ever was.
Tapping into his latent incel energy.
Yes. And yeah, that's kind of where we leave it. We don't, like, I think these episodes kind of show that like they're not really changing things, but more like the anime understands that like this section of the game is kind of a little whatever, right? Like
right.
Between the events of 2B's death and then past the really bad things that happened to Pascal's village, like, that section in between is kind of just like A2 and 9S doing various like fetch quests. So
yeah,
the anime is like, we know you don't really want to see that, so why don't we do something else instead?
Yeah,
and
I mean, it's still kind of
it
accomplishing its right. And that's been the thing with this adaptation, is they keep making smart decisions like that, right?
Yeah.
What do you think, Iro?
Yeah, pretty much. Just it continues to be pretty good. I'm a little worried because of course, as we get towards the end of the game, the story is more directed. And so the worry is that, like, by the end, the show will just be doing what we didn't want it to do at first, and which is just following the story.
Yeah, there's gonna be less wiggle room as you get more toward the end.
But the story at the end is good, and so it's like,
yeah,
I don't want to jinx it, but I don't think they could fuck it up too much.
I think I don't remember if I said last time. I just want to know how they're gonna do like the final fight with A2 and 9S, because that I feel like that's so much of that was the gameplay.
Question. Yeah.
Like the gameplay contributed so much to that moment. Like it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. But yeah. Sounds good. Sounds like they're still trucking along and, like I said, making the right decisions. All right. Moving on to Sengoku Youko. I was on the fence about watching more, and I gotta say, guys, I think I'm tapped out. But
that's fair.
You know, the other hot shonen adaptation, of the season.
Yeah.
But how's that been going?
It's fine.
Do you have anything you want to say about Sengoku Youko at this point?
The thing about, I think we've talked about this already. The thing about like Mizukami is a lot of, I think like the best parts of his stuff are how it will be very similar to what you were expecting, and then there will be like small deviations from the norm in really good ways, right? And it's harder for that stuff to stand out when it's just not that visually appealing. Like when it's so mediocre looking that like you kind of just start checking out a little. It's like it's harder for it to keep your attention for those moments to like actually land. And so
I do.
That's like the frustrating thing to me.
This is a show that has like fight scenes and stuff, and those do require like some level of But
I think about like other anime that kind of, I don't want to say necessarily have the same energy as Mizukami's works, but maybe like, how do I put this? Are also anime that are kind of trading on like Mizukami's like humanistic optimism. And funnily enough, the one I actually do kind of think of, right, is like something kind of like a Vinland Saga Season 2, which is like not particularly action heavy, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like even there, it's kind of like, it's still a pretty good looking anime, right? Like, it's kind of that, it's like kind of what you're getting at. You kind of need a certain amount of production, like, just to like, I think get people to listen, right? To pay attention. I feel like it's.
I don't think Sengoku Youko is clearing that bar, which is frustrating, right?
Of course, yeah.
Because it's like, I can watch and go and think to myself, when I read that in the manga, like that's, and like if I'm just looking at like the writing of some of these moments, I'm like, that's a really good emotional beat, and because this anime just has to rush past everything and sort of sloppily stumble through, like none of that stuff really gets to sell itself.
Well, at least the anime will be reaching one of the few parts of Sengoku Youko that I actually do remember in fairly good detail. So that'll be cool. I'll be real curious how they adapt that part, because not to spoil it, but the part of what makes it really cool in the manga is how it also kind of plays with the medium that it is printed on.
Yes.
And I'm real curious, because the thing is that like if the anime just portrays that scene as it appears in the manga, it kind of won't be that cool. Like part of what makes it cool is
there is a single spread that is like 10 or 12 pages.
Okay, fine. Well, if you're just going to spoil it...
I'm just going to spoil it. I'm just, like, what else am I supposed to say? Like,
yes.
And so, like, in an anime, like, what are you going to do? Just pan past a still? Like,
right.
How does that work?
It's like, because the fact of the matter is that because the spread is so many pages long, right? Like, it goes completely against how manga is meant to be formatted. It literally breaks the barriers of the medium itself to create a sense of scale.
Right. And how the hell do you do that? Just, yeah, I don't know.
Well, that hasn't happened yet, right? We're waiting.
No. But what I'm saying is it's coming soon.
An episode or two, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so maybe next episode we'll know how they pulled that off. I mean, it's not. I mean, to me, that sounds like the easy thing is just a long camera pan, but that's become, like you're saying, that's just a normal thing you do in a like animated form, so it's not going to really have the same impact.
I feel like the only way I'd be satisfied is if they make the camera pan like 2 minutes long.
Yeah, just like really
go hands in, like
yeah.
Just I don't know. Yeah. I wish I could just hoot and holler about how good it is, and I can't. And that's how I felt about Biscuit Hammer also, right? Like,
yeah. It's like that. Yeah, I mean, not quite to that level, but
no.
I do feel like the show looked a little better when they started out, and it kind of got deteriorated. So I don't know. Oh,
it's really not fair.
Yeah,
sorry.
I mean, at least we have Fate Stay Night.
Yes, we talked about this a little bit when we were watching, but like, when you have a middling adaptation like this,
right? Yeah.
Like, I think it's easy when you have a really bad adaptation to say it would be better off if this didn't exist. Like,
right?
Like, in a world where the only adaptation Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer was ever going to get is the one that it got, it might have been better if it simply
wasn't there. Right.
Yeah, but when you have kind of a middling adaptation, it's kind of like, I mean,
there are people that like this.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, I looked at the ratings for Sengoku Youko on a couple of, like, these, like, you know, fan aggregator, like, rating websites.
A lot of people are calling it a sleeper hit kind of thing.
And there are even a couple of people who have rated it a 10 out of 10 anime. And I don't probably agree with that, but it's like, okay, because we've always talked about how, like, okay, we have our own taste and other people have their own taste, right? And blah, blah, blah. Something is always somebody's favorite, right? Like, if there exists this hypothetical person for whom Sengoku Youko is now their favorite anime, philosophically, holistically, is that a net good for Sengoku Youko? Like, as the Sengoku Youko anime...
Yeah. Again, comparing to Biscuit Hammer, which I feel like was actively turning people off to the story and everything. At least this is getting some people, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is some net positive to it, I'm sure. But yeah, I don't know, man.
Alas.
All right. Let's move on and talk about Senpais and Otokonoko. I guess while we're on the disappointment train here.
Oh dear.
Does the title still cover the load?
well, okay. Let me. You guys know how high I was on the show in the first couple episodes.
Yeah.
And I feel like they've gone, at least for my personal preference, the worst possible way they could have gone while not going in the actual worst part of the way, parts which would have been becoming like offensive and problematic, which it doesn't do any of that. But plot-wise, I did not like these last two episodes.
Okay.
So, as you recall, there is a bit of a love triangle thing going on in the show. And you may even recall last episode me saying, I hope they don't go into the love triangle stuff as much.
I mean, wasn't that kind of part of the show's basic premise, though?
Yeah, but in the beginning of the show, it was like, yeah, these two had like a crush on the main guy, but the actual content of the show was the three of them being friends and like hanging out and stuff, which was nice. And these last two episodes, they just crank the love triangle dial to 11. And that is like the only it's just dumb love triangle type drama So like, for example, the girl starts having this like complete like meltdown. This is all like serious. Like she starts having this meltdown because she starts to think that she doesn't love the main kid as much as the other guy does. And we get this whole thing where it's very weird because this just did not feel like a thing that people do, but she was, and maybe I'm wrong, but she's like has this flashback where she was promising her grandmother that she would find a special someone someday, and she thought that she has now found her special someone, and she can go. And her grandmother's still alive, by the way. So she tells her grandmother, "I found my special someone," and she's so happy. And then she gets these very slight, subtle hints that are probably mostly in her head about where she starts doubting that she actually loves him because the other guy seems to actually love him more. Like people can tell that guy is in love with it, and they can't tell that she's in love with him. And
of course,
and it's like part of it I can chalk up to her being a teenage, just like a dumb teenager,
children,
but and not having ever experienced this before. But I don't know, it just felt very like weird and unnatural and just like a contrived type of plot point, because like she's like ready to like break up the whole group and everything. It's very melodramatic.
It's like a whole thing. Like, I mean, I already mentioned this with Makeine, but it's just so hard to take that kind of stuff seriously anymore at this point.
I mean, yes, part of it is I'm a middle-aged man, so it's like this is like, come on, these silly kids. But also, I mean, I also, it just didn't feel like something that it didn't feel natural, right? It felt like something made up just to like break the plot up a little bit, like things were going too well. And so there's basically stuff like that through the episode, and we get the other kid, the other guy, like also basically figuring out that he's gay, which is a little more interesting. But they kind of frame that as a in practice, it's basically just, oh, I think I'm actually in love with him, and it's very
right,
standard.
because like is it like actually, oh, I'm gay, or is it like, oh,
there's very little,
I don't mind gender when it comes to this like person.
So like there's like a little bit of like hesitancy where he's like, oh, this is weird that I like a guy or whatever. So there's like a very little bit of that, but in practice, it's mostly just the same as it would be in any other romantic comedy. And I think what frustrates me the most is because, if anything would make this interesting, it would be taking it from the perspective of the main kid, who is clearly trying to figure things out, right? So that perspective would be interesting, but he's the only one that we don't get to see how he feels, at least about the other two characters. And so there's an opportunity, while there's an opportunity there for him to be exploring, because he's already clearly trying to figure out his gender and sexuality. That would be an interesting angle to take, but he kind of doesn't really have much of a role to play in these two episodes, other than just being like the eye candy for these two to be interested in. And
this show seems to have a very like dubious relationship with its main character, like, because sometimes it's very much about him and his struggles, and other times it is about like how he's basically very like shallowly observed by his love interests, right? Like it's a bit odd, like when you have your character switching from like subject to object in between episodes.
yeah, that might be a good way to put it. And it's not like there's nothing bad about it. Like I said, I mean,
it's not like
the actual worst route for the show would be if it started stepping on all the landmines that it's set up around itself with its subject matter, which it doesn't.
It's not object as in objectified. It's just like object as in
it's no longer
the story who is it's the object of the actions in the story rather than the subject.
It hasn't really been from his perspective. We get like a little bit of his inner thoughts where he gets confused and thinks the other two might be dating, which is another classic love triangle move. and
I mean, isn't
but
it
as far
like very clearly established that the girl is a lesbian?
no,
Oh,
not
okay.
really.
She was just in love with
because when yes, she basically says she loves him whether he's a boy or a girl.
Okay,
is
yeah,
basically
sure,
what it
sure.
comes down to. Yeah, so I mean, there's they could still go that route because she's kind of got her sort of self-doubt thing going. Maybe there was some speculation that might be where they're going. I don't think it is. I don't think any of this is going anywhere, to be honest, which is disappointing. I think it's going to end status quo, a status quo ending type of thing. But
I mean, it is what Iro said last episode, like how this is seems to be mostly a thing of like, this is the kind of situation, and we're not going to make like sweeping statements about.
Yeah, and I wasn't
topics,
even looking for that.
Mhm.
I just liked it when it was the three of them hanging out and it was a nice people being nice to each other show, and because that felt very positive and reinforcing along with the because this is his support system, because they did establish that his mother at home does not he can't he has to pretend to be a man when he's at home because of his mother. So like it felt very nice because like that was his support system. And it still is, but that at least in these 2 episodes they might loop back around at some next week or whatever. But
the thing is, like, this is the kind of stuff you'd expect around like episode 10 or 11 of
like
5 or 6, but,
maybe I don't know. It just didn't feel like it just didn't feel like this is where the show was going or should have gone, and I just don't care for that angle.
I mean, like, the number of anime that can like graciously transition from like cozy, nice hangout, slight comedy-ish to like romantic drama and emotions is like, you can count that on one hand. Like, it's basically a cliche at this point. You're like, you get your like 12 episode anime, and like the last 2 episodes are kind of bad because they have to jam some sort of conflict in there.
Well, maybe it's better they get out of their system in episode 4 and 5 then. I
guess so, yeah.
So
unless they've got like even more like ridiculous things lined
up.
I
think there's plenty of time for the show to like recover and just be part of the maybe they just wanted to take an opportunity to highlight what the other 2 were thinking in the background, and then we get back to business as usual.
How do they wrap things up with his mother? Like, is it just
haven't.
They haven't. Like, it's just like, this like dramatic climax happens. And
the only because he basically was like, all right, I'm just going to stop being a girl. And he tries that for like 24 hours, and then it goes back to where it was, which is he'll do that while he's at school, but then at home he still has to pretend
which
to
is
be a boy.
Like realistic, like things conflicts come to a climax and then they just sort of fizzle out, and
well, I mean, it went back
actually gets solved.
Like, it went back to the status quo basically. So that hasn't really changed anything. So anyway, there's like I said, I'm not giving up on the show. Just these last 2 episodes I haven't enjoyed, and I hope they don't like stay in that mode too long, but we'll see. All right, let's talk about Mayonaka Punch. Interesting set of episodes we had with these 2.
We spoke too soon in the previous podcast.
Yeah, when we were saying there was like nothing else going on, they decided to remind us that if you have a vampire story, you can always tap into the sadness of immortality angle.
Yes.
And I was not expecting. I think it was episode 4 where we got into Fu, who's the quiet one, hasn't really done much yet. Her backstory, where she was going to be in a band or a music group or something with this girl back in the
Showa.
Yeah, everyone's trying to peg
it could have happened anywhere between like in the 70s to yesterday.
The Showa.
Yeah, so late Showa era, but just interesting that people have been trying to peg the date. Go ahead, G, if you had.
Just specifically, it's like, I mean, for my part, I gotta admit, like the quote unquote twist at the end of the episode did get me pretty good, because I had not clued into like like, I mean, yeah, the girl has like a Showa era school uniform, but it did not.
Right.
It did
They're
not really
listening to
click
like
for me.
tapes, right? Yeah.
It did not click for me. That was like, oh, that was like 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Which like, I mean that like that's still a fairly young age to pass, but it's not as like unexpected as like someone in their teens or 20s, right?
Yeah. This could have been a quote unquote natural death.
Yes. Like I think people, I think all the songs written on the cassette tape are like they're all like basically just like thinly veiled references to real tracks, and
and they're all like specifically referencing the year 1978, I think.
Yes, and so people like I've kind of nailed it down to like they're listening to it on Walkmans, so it's like like late 70s, early 80s, which
that was interesting because I was trying to remember, and I am old, although I'm not quite that old, but I do remember like I felt like people actually recording things on cassette wasn't really happening until we were starting to get into the 80s. Like I have memories, like some of my earliest memories where like my mom still had records, like it was not like a full transition over into cassettes yet, and I think having a cassette player that would also record would be pretty rare at that point. But I don't know if kids were making mixtapes in 1977, which I think was the year, but I don't know.
I mean, I guess the point is more technologically feasible, if not.
Yes,
I get the feeling the Walkman and mixtapes are like an 80s thing. But like,
the
Walkman was released in 1979, so
there you go. Yeah.
So anyway, that's getting too in the weeds on that part of it. But the point is, it was in that era that we get this flashback.
Yeah, we were introduced to Fu's friend Aya, who like wants to form a band with Fu. Like this is all in the backdrop of like obviously Masaki's like, damn, we need more content, and discovers
breaks into her room.
Right, literally breaks into Fu's room. Is like, damn, you're a good singer. That's our next video.
Incredibly fun.
And it's a little fucked up, but I think it broadly balances out in the end, right? Because of Fu's personality, right? Like the thing we kind of get into with this episode is that Fu is the type of person to like probably eternally self-castigate themselves for like perceived like mistakes in their past. And when you're a vampire, that means you can do that for a real long time. Yep. And maybe you need like a kind of gregarious shitheel like Masaki to knock somebody out of that routine. Like,
right.
Like, yes, Masaki is doing it for the hashtag content, but there is an element of like, hey, I'm setting this up because if I don't do this, you're never going to do it, right? Like, because, just based on what has been established about Fu's character, right? Like, she was never going to take that first step on her own, right? And, the ending, right? A little predictable. Well, not predictable, but like a little like,
Yeah, I didn't know if they were going to go as far as, I mean, she basically finds that her friend has passed away, like we said.
Has passed away, right? The tragedy is it is already too late for Fu to reconcile with her old friend. Who,
right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and it was pretty well done. Like that is hard.
I think it was well done. Like I actually like how matter of fact it was delivered. Right? Like
and it was that's a hard thing to do with the type of just type of wacky, incredibly dumb show that we've had up to now, and just like pivot on a 90-degree angle to this other kind of mood, this kind of melancholy that they brought in. And I think they did a good job of it, especially in one episode. Part of it I think was the sort of the matter of fact delivery, like you said, G, where they presented as this is life, right? This is how things just go sometimes.
I think it's also interesting because up till now we don't really get any indication that the vampire girls here, I mean, I assume they must have interacted with humans in the past, but like I think it's very notable that right that like for all these like comedy hijinks between these girls and all the like dirt baggery that is happening here, other than Masaki, it mostly stays within within the species, so to speak, right? It's
Right.
vampires being shitty to other vampires, and kind of establishing, kind of like, yeah, no, actually, like maybe these girls may have once had relationships of some kind with other, mortal humans before meeting Masaki, right? And
Right.
I don't think the show is necessarily going to like go down the path of like, oh, now we also need to address the fleeting mortality of Masaki and her relationship with Liv, but it does kind of allow that tone and theme to exist in the space.
And I think this will lead us into the next episode, but this episode got me excited for the possibilities of, okay, now I can see Mayonaka Punch exploring like any kind of, they might just decide to pick somebody else's flashback that has a completely different, tone. Right. Could be somewhere in like, the 1920s or something. I don't know, whatever, right? And
for a World War II episode.
So I'm thinking that as we go
out, like Tokage was part of like fucking Death Squad in Manchuria or some shit.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
That's maybe a little too dark. I was about to go the direction of like, oh, are we gonna like get some like, I don't know, noir flashback with Tokage, like, I don't know, like in some like smoky gambling den in the 1920s or something.
I actually invented the pachinko machine.
Oh god, that would be so good with her like trying to be the classic film noir femme fatale, but not
exactly,
but being her dumbass self.
Super bad at it.
That would be pretty good, but yeah. But, so with that in mind, as we went into the next episode, I wouldn't say I was disappointed, but we did get back to business as usual.
Definitely a back to normal episode.
It was a fun episode, though.
I think I really liked the first like 15 minutes of this episode. Like, I think just, these fucking assholes on this island, right, pretending to like survive on this desert island, and well, like, I mean,
let me go put this angle here so it makes it look like I'm dragging this thing.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Just put it down.
Tokage literally punching a tree.
She did it Mercenary Tao style, dude.
Oh, what?
She did it just like Mercenary Tao.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. I think there's some good hijinks, even but I do kind of wonder about like the last part of the episode, which kind of veers into the like
saccharine,
a little saccharine, right?
They can't like do an actual romance between Masaki and Levi because then it's not funny anymore. Like,
right. And so you kind of have this whole like the whole quote unquote like source of the conflict in this episode, right? Is like, Masaki wants to record a video, but all other vampire girls are not to be found, right? And so she's like, fine, you want, like go film your own content and see how hard it is, right? And
right. But
it's a little weird because like it's not Liv's fault. Like, she was the one who actually showed up to the meeting on time. Like,
right.
So like her being the one quote unquote punished for it is a little strange. And then the like I don't know how I would have wanted this episode to end, but like I don't know, like it's just a little too, I mean, again, saccharine. I think it's just a little too sweet for this kind of show. Like,
right.
Like, I don't need these people to be assholes to each other all the time, but
I think they were trying to, and maybe they went a little too far. I think they were trying to show that their relationship has evolved to where they, there is a certain level of that they care about each other now.
Honesty, yeah.
But it was a little saccharine. That seems to be the best word. So, but it was a fun episode though. It was some goofy hijinks.
I mean, watching Tokage like in super speed trying to build a raft to leave the island got me pretty good.
Her attempts to get out of there, was some real good comedy. Yeah. So, Yeah, it's fun times. It'll be interesting to see if they mix things up in other episodes.
We all know
it would be
the
very
best
weird.
Content is people suffering.
Yeah, it would be weird if we got that one episode that has like heart to it, and everything else was just business as usual. I don't know. Or
I mean, this
in
is
a way. It kind of makes me think of like, I don't know, Osumatsu-san or something, where you'd occasionally get an episode like that.
Right, what's his name? The God,
Jushimatsu, yeah, the Jushimatsu.
No, I was thinking about that one episode with the bucktooth guy, the one that's like basically just Majima's story from Yakuza 0.
Oh, Yami.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they copy the story of City Lights in that episode.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mayonaka Punch is fun. Let's move on. Let's talk about Ramen Akaneko. God, all of my shows are kind of letting me down with this episode.
Oh no!
I think we kind of ran out of gas a little bit. These episodes kind of focus on the regulars, customers that show up to the shop, and they're all just kind of normal people.
Yeah, they're not cats. What's up with that?
But even just humans, there's nothing like one guy's just like a kind of tired, quiet salaryman, and being at this place warms his soul, and that's kind of it. The only kind of interesting one was this lady who is another lawyer that's friends with their lawyer that comes into the shop, and she really, really loves cats. And I gotta say, I've been on the record. I appreciate that the show makes zero effort to explain why these cats are sentient people and very human-like.
It's called magic realism, Joe.
Yeah, I like that. But some of the things that happened with this lady and a couple other things have me asking a lot of questions. So, like, her thing is she really loves cats. And for one summer, she actually worked for the shop to be the human that brushes the cats. Because if you recall, it's easier for humans to brush them because,
right,
they have human hands.
They have opposable thumbs.
And they have opposable thumbs. And they fired her because she was treating them like normal cats. So she was like,
patting them and hugging
talking to them like babies, and like petting them with her hands, God forbid. And I'm like, does that mean there are normal cats in this universe?
So. It's like how Donald and Scrooge can go duck hunting, right? Like,
I was about to say, like, is this the like, are there regular animals in the Pokemon world?
No.
Yeah.
There used to be, there's not anymore. But
there's another bit in one of the episodes where they explain that the tiger Sayori Hayami grew up in a zoo.
Okay.
As tigers
even though she is a like sentient
being,
that she was raised in a captivity was a little weird.
But are they like, they are diegetically sentient, right? They are like, they can talk to the humans who come to their shop.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. They're all. They're like, yes, from like a mental point of view, they're basically humans, right?
Right.
Well, it certainly wouldn't be the first time a sentient being was placed in a zoo. So there is a precedent for that.
Yeah. So anyway, that just opened a lot of questions for me. I mean, the only other interesting plot point was they reveal that the gray cat, who we've seen him kind of be like the manager of the shop, like he's kind of doing some odd jobs, helping people with other things, and we've seen him working some Excel spreadsheets here and there, right? And they reveal that he's actually super rich and he's the owner of the shop.
Okay.
So like the main girl is just like one day like looking out the window and she sees him riding in the back of like a BMW or something, sucking on a cat treat. Like a boss,
cigar. Yeah,
and like a cigar or something, and she finds out that he is the CEO of the company, and he's actually super rich, and nobody knows it. So I mean, as exciting as that sounds, that was the highlight of the 2 episodes. So, the only other thing I would mention is I haven't really, I don't know if I haven't noticed it or it just hasn't bothered me, but this show does use quite a bit of CG, and
It's hard to draw animals.
not even the animals, not even the animals, but the people. And they like blend it in a way where you don't really notice if there's not a lot of movement.
Right.
But I feel like they've gotten worse at it so far because like there's not a lot of shading in it or anything. So like if you just took a screenshot, you might not even notice that they're using 3D.
Right.
But some of it's been looking really bad lately, and they'll be cutting from 2D to 3D a lot, which is always bad. And I don't know. It feels like that's been kind of falling apart a little bit too. So I don't know. Did I enjoy the episodes? Yes. They were pleasant. I enjoyed them, but we might have run out of gas on this one. I hope they find some, bring in another asshole streamer guy or some, Yakuza-kun or something like that to make things interesting. So I refuse to lose to the curse of Kenjiro Suda. We're gonna make it out of this one. We're gonna make it out of this one.
We're gonna do it.
Yeah. All right. Finally, let's talk about Dead Demons DDD Destruction. Just for the record, I have started watching this and I'm up to episode 4.
Okay.
Which is right after the one girl dies.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. After they attack the saucers or whatever, and so that's where I'm caught up to. But I know you guys are probably almost done with it at this point, right?
It's 18 episodes.
I thought it was only the one. Okay, so
no. So we actually have a fair bit to go.
Okay.
God, this show is really good, isn't it?
It's a lot.
It's a lot happening.
Just to quickly go into it, these last 2 episodes have kind of, I guess I would say from my perspective, are mostly kind of covering the escalation of military and civil violence against the aliens.
Just like the slowly creeping apathy towards what is essentially a genocide.
Yes. There are, man. I mean, there's a lot of directions I could take this conversation.
Gee, I wonder if the show is about something.
No, it seems apolitical to me.
Famously apolitical manga or anime and manga, famously apolitical medium. But in all seriousness, so we see that as Japan has developed increasingly better Fujin robots, they are definitely starting to take a much more proactive stance against shooting down the alien crafts. We begin to see more perspective of the aliens.
Yeah, and the version 9 Fujin was designed by your favorite idol.
Wait, what?
Like, I mean, the opening of episode 11 is about how they are marketing.
Oh yes, they are marketing it. Yes,
my bad. With this idol who designed a cute little apron for it.
Yeah, I forgot. Yes.
Yeah. On that note, something I don't think we mentioned that I realized while watching. Are we basically just saying Sony became an ARMS developer?
Yes. That is
quite literally.
It is quite literally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Kairetsu, man. They've got a
So so it's like a lot of alien murder, of course. A lot of really brutal alien murder, right? Because we are not only seeing it from the military, right, in which they are kind of we see in the first of these 2 episodes that some aliens are found on the campus of the university that Karode and Ontan attend, and it's some real it's like the students are evacuated into a room or into one of the buildings, and they watch as the soldier, and they literally see with their own eyes, right, the soldiers kind of storm campus and then execute a bunch of surrendering aliens. And at the same time, Karode and Ontan have met the alien kid. I don't know if he has a name.
Oba.
What?
I mean, they
what-
call him Oba because he is
Oba.
possessing the body of
Right.
Kadode's favorite idol, who was named Oba.
Yes. And so there is this kind of interesting. Again, I assume it's intentional, but almost like a little frustrating or maybe tragic subtext of like Karade and Ontan clearly recognize the inherent humanity of Oba. Like they respect his sentience and like clearly treat him as they bestow him personhood. But they are also like deeply apathetic to like
He's shaped like a human after all. I mean,
and it's like there is a part of me that wants to go like surely and I guess this does happen because you get the introduction of Ship, but like there's an element that we're watching these episodes, I almost go like it would be one thing if these aliens looked like monsters but still had the sentience of human beings, and the whole message was like humans judge a book by its cover. But the fact that these aliens explicitly have the shape of like children, of human children,
little wacky little guys.
like the idea that like apathy and sympathy would be this low for like,
I mean,
children-sized people being shot to death by the military. But then I mean outside of the news, and I go,
just look at the news, like
exactly. That's what I'm getting at here, right? And it's like, but I mean, like. And it's like, this is nothing new, right? It was like Inio Asano like wrote this in what, like 2018, 2019 or something? And
I
it's
think
like
even earlier, like
maybe. I don't it finished in 2022. So I'm just,
yeah.
like, and it's like, you know, we talk about how hard Pluto hits despite that thing being written in 2003, and it's like, oh god, right. Just nothing changes. Nothing like changes.
Like the aliens are comically humanized, like they look cute, they get Japanese names, like they constantly pantomime human behaviors and human tropes to like explicitly drive home the point that they are indistinguishable from humans, right?
And like this kind of continues into like the next episode 11, where like
sorry, before you move on, I do want to say one thing. Like, of course, like the whole thing of like humanity's apathy is a big theme in this show, not just because out of cruelty, but also like because we have so much other shit to deal with that it has something become overwhelming. But like for Karade and Ontan specifically, like this is obviously meant to contrast the flashback in which they are shown to be extremely empathetic. I mean, to the degree where
Karade cares too much.
Karade cares too much that she just wants to murder everything that she perceives as evil. And so there's obviously something going on here. Because Oba also like reads Ontan's mind, and
that's what I was getting at.
And realizes that there are quote unquote two of her in there.
Right, and I mean, this kind of goes back to like you weren't here for the previous podcast, Aqua, but you know, Ira and I were speculating about like something happened in between, Karade and Ontan's childhood, right? And we don't really quite know what, right? But I imagine that is also part of the mystery. But
obviously,
I will also, yes, now that we got to that, yes. So like, and then in the following episode, right? It's like we get maybe the longest like viewpoint of the alien's perspective, right? And they specifically, there's an interesting usage of language that it's hard to tell if that was in the original or if that's a choice of the translations. But you know, being that we are watching, this being subtitled, the aliens refer to the humans as invaders, and specifically refer to there being either conflict has already occurred between aliens and humans, or there is now an intent to engage in open conflict with the humans. And I think this is really interesting, right? Because from the perspective we've been given so far in this show, the aliens have been unilaterally portrayed as victims. And I mean, I think they are broadly still victims, but there is this like idea that the aliens are in fact aware to some extent of what is being done to them, and I guess we'll see, because like we've also seen the technology these aliens possess to a certain extent, and so what does it look like for this completely different species, this completely different culture, to start pushing back against like what mankind has done to them?
But that's like the interesting thing, right? Because like the entire episode, the most recent one, is essentially about radicalization. You know, how like aliens as the victims are radicalized to like counteract or like react with violence, just as much as Futaba like has to abandon her pacifism to get anything done. Like,
that is definitely something I want to.
That is one thing, and then like the second thing is also, I think that the aliens are also humanized through, like they are portrayed as human also because like they always talk about like, oh, our nation has abandoned us.
Yes.
They talk about war. They talk about humans being the invaders. Like there's a clear explicit parallel being set up, you know, that is like reflected in the fact that when we look at things from the perspective of the aliens are speaking Japanese and the humans are speaking like garbled nonsense.
Right.
Whereas when we are with the humans, they speak Japanese and the aliens speak garbled nonsense.
Yeah.
So I think it's not necessarily a like, or like the whole referring to humans as invaders things is more supposed to be a reflection of like, oh, to them we are the other, just like how they are the other to us, rather than any like world building or allusion to things that may have happened in the past. Like,
I think that's fair. I guess to speak to kind of the point you were making, right? Like, yes, this latest episode is very much about radicalization, right? Like we, you know, again, not to tie it too much to current events because obviously this was written before some of
they gave her the doohickey,
but yes, you know, right. So right. So that's, Ira and I like literally had to check. I mean, we didn't look at the manga, but we were like, when was this specific plot point written? Anyways, so to build it up, right? So yes, so we have the aliens who are being unilaterally, like violence is being committed upon them, and as you might see in the news, when any community or a nation or civilization is violently acted upon, can you blame them for responding in turn, right? Meanwhile, you have the rise of these two kind of growing, burgeoning movements in Japan, SHIP and the YUF. The
YUF and the Octolings.
You know, the YUF is essentially, you know, a vigilante alien genocide movement, right? Like it is a group of vigilantes who delve into the kind of like contaminated zones to hunt down aliens, right? There is this kind of sentiment among them, right, that like they believe the government isn't doing enough to kill these aliens, right? That it's not just enough to shoot down their ships. We need to go into their homes and kill their people, right? And the thing about the YUF is that they are all awful people, psychopaths, but also fully committed to their cause. And they are contrasted by SHIP, who are the movement of people who believe that peaceful negotiations and rights should be extended to the aliens. Essentially,
right. They are progressives, and therefore they always constantly shoot themselves in the foot by trying to take the high road and arguing among themselves.
Not only that, but what you see in more these types of movements, right, is a hugely varying degree of commitment to the movement, right? Like we literally see in this episode that that the guy that Futaba sleeps with is quite literally the embodiment of I joined PETA to pick up vegan chicks. Like that is literally the subtext there, right? And specifically he uses the word game as in when are you going to stop playing your activism game to Futaba, right? The idea that even this shitheel is saying to Futaba, your activism is it's an affectation, right?
Because in the end, like it doesn't matter to us because
Right.
they're aliens and we're humans.
And we get this whole thing of like ship attempts non-disruptive peaceful protest. And as you might guess, when your protest is peaceful and does not disrupt the status quo, it's really easy to ignore. And that is what happens, right? Ships protests, their activism has largely been impotent, ineffective, right? Easy to ignore, right? Like Futaba's friends, like Haru and Ontan, like barely even register like Futaba's like activism other than, oh, it sucks you can't hang out with us.
Right. It's like,
Like,
basically
that's
like,
right.
oh, she's in the tennis club. Like,
Yeah, basically, right? And this all kind of culminates in a confrontation between the YUF and Ship on the streets. And again, I do not. I think everybody associated with the YUF so far has been portrayed as a fucking monster, but their leader does kind of make the salient point that, hey, if you're fucking serious about this shit, like handing out flyers and like holding up signs doesn't do jack fucking shit to achieve your political aims. Like, if you actually care about what you are fighting for here, he's kind of saying you would be doing what I'm doing, you know? And this all culminates in Futaba meeting with what appears to be ship leadership, right?
yeah, a high-ranking member of Ship,
Who basically says the same thing that the fuckboy said to Futaba earlier in the episode, which is, are you real about this? Are you done playing activism games? And basically hands Futaba a pistol, a 3D printed pistol, and says, I think you know what needs to be done. And that's where we end things here for now. And
It's a lot.
man.
Gee, I wonder if the show is about something.
I mean, I wonder if it's about multiple things, right?
Yeah. There's a lot
really
of
touching on a lot of like very modern, relevant topics at the moment.
there's a lot of angles. Even you know, like, again, I'm only back on episode 4, but even, I mean, right from the get-go, I mean, there's a lot of the probably the biggest theme being the, you know, the apathy of the average person, and like, you know, which you could apply. I mean, it sounds like as we're getting further along in the story, it's very more specifically applying to specific sort of, you know, conflicts or whatever. But I mean, even you could apply that to any recent things like climate change or COVID or whatever. Like, you know, at some point,
also
people
just like the general like increasing absurdity of things. Like at this point in the show, like people know about the aliens. Like for a long time, it was like
the government denies
and like everyone who claims to have seen an alien is like sort of looked down on. But at this point, like everyone has seen an alien. They know what an alien looks like. They are like witnessing aliens being shot in the street and nothing changes. Like
we set up our small business with an app where you can call us in to clean up the aliens in your area.
And not only that, but that app is probably also selling your information to the government, right? There's also that like plot.
They always are. Right? Which is like, they all are.
Right? It's like I do love that in the midst of all of this, right? We do occasionally flash to the government's perspective. And like they don't even care about the aliens, right? All they care about is how will we use this to like consolidate our power on the geopolitical scale, right? Like how will this allow? Like how will
the Americans think? Yeah,
right, exactly. Like it's all like even up to the highest level, even up to the government that is responsible for this genocide,
right?
Yeah, don't even care.
It's saying a lot of scathing things about humanity, and I can't really disagree with any of them.
It is like, I think that is a kind of tough thing with this. I mean, this is why famously I don't read Inio Asano works, right? Because I kind of don't want to feel like this all the time. But it's at least in this current juncture in history, you know, like DeDeDeDe does feel like it has its finger on the pulse in some really tragic ways, I guess, which I suppose I'm impressed by.
It's not fair. This gets a big budget, and Sengoku Youko doesn't. Put some budget in like the shows about mankind's inherent goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think on that note, I've actually been watching it dubbed because that is an option on Crunchyroll.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the subtitles are dub titles.
Yes. The subtitles for the show are not good.
Yeah, I know. So it was interesting on Crunchyroll. If you turn on English audio, you can only turn on closed caption, and it is very much auto-generated closed caption. Like, so it's like phonetic. I think they call Anton is just Anton.
Anton. Anton. I'm calling her that from now on.
The dub itself is kind of up and down in quality wise. For some reason, to me, it kind of feels like a 2000s era dub.
Ooh.
And I feel
That's
like
kind of what all of Crunchyroll's dubs feel like.
Yeah, there have been some like specific scenes that have had. I feel like when they really need it, like for some of the more emotional scenes, the acting has been good, but like for the, just the everyday kind of people talking stuff, it feels a little flat. I do appreciate though that they have been redoing a lot of the graphics to translate text.
Are they doing that now?
Yeah, for this show anyway. I feel like this.
No, I mean, literally, when it first started airing, like DeDeDeDe subs were in pretty awful shape. Like they didn't subtitle text on screen.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I don't know. I when I'm watching the dub version, it's so like they're literally redrawing, like how like they'll show like the location, the date or something, and it's in that, like they'll like literally redraw it in English. Like,
man, I feel like that's fallen out of vogue.
Or like,
I know, right?
Or like there was one where like one of the girls was like looking at her text messages and like they redid the text messages in English completely instead of just.
It was definitely not like that a month ago.
Okay, well. Yeah. The other thing is the dub and I think the dub and the they might be separate video, like completely separate videos too.
They probably are if they are adjusting the graphics. Then yeah.
Sheesh, man.
So I guess you got to watch it dubbed if you want your text translated properly.
They're leaving the original Japanese version of the show out to dry, man. Jeez.
Yeah. So that's been interesting. I don't know if I just wanted to. It's so rare that like a simulcast show, or I guess this isn't even really a simulcast. I guess this is its own weird kind of timing thing, but it's rare that they have the dub already like that. So let me mix it up a little bit. So that's interesting.
Yeah,
but yeah, I'll keep trying to catch up. And it's,
I guess since we have you here for this recording, I guess Aqua, how like. It seems like you like this anime, but like, I guess, it's like, are there any like, have any particular feelings or thoughts about like how they have handled this adaptation? Like, are there?
I think they're doing it. I mean, they're shaking up the order of events quite.
Right. Yes, we have certainly talked about episode 0 already, but
episode 0 obviously, but even like within the quote unquote main timeline of the show, things are shifting back and forth a little bit. Like I cannot say this with certainty, but in my memory, the flashback comes a lot later than it does, or than it did here in the show. Yes, like I get the feeling that they have a really like tight grip on how to adapt things in a way that makes good use of the fact that a 25 episode or like a 25-minute episode is longer than a single manga chapter. Like they are dividing the contents, the information that they need to adapt in an interesting way. For example, in the last episode, how like this like combines a bunch of scenes featuring characters that are not our main characters around that theme of radicalization to create an episode that has a consistent theme running throughout, whereas the manga would be a little bit more like all over the place. When
Right,
the one
a manga
one
can.
chapter of like slice of life
Yeah.
antics, one chapter of like, oh, this is what Futaba's up to, one chapter of the invaders, like stuff like that, right?
I
So I
think
think they're doing a
manga
very good job.
traditionally. I mean that is good to hear because I was gonna say I think manga traditionally is able to kind of veer wildly tonally like that a lot more
Right.
effectively. Whereas I think when you are watching things in these kind of set 25-minute chunks, it does kind of make sense to kind of coalesce all the things that are thematically similar under one umbrella.
And like what makes it more impressive is that this is technically a double adaptation, right? Because they went from manga to film, and now they're cutting the film into an episodic anime, and they're doing a pretty good job making those episodes feel coherent, right?
So
you're not getting the feeling you're watching a movie being sliced up into chunks.
I guess I don't know if you've seen the movies, but
no, I have not.
Okay, okay, never mind. Because I was like,
those movies do not exist in any form other than their theatrical release.
Right. I guess what I was trying to figure out. So the movies cover the entire story.
I think not.
Okay, that's what I was curious about.
No. I think the movies technically end at the point where the story then picks up again with what we saw in episode 0.
Okay.
And therefore, the movies leave out the entire final volume of the manga.
Okay, and so that is kind of the reason why then you would want to, even if you saw it in theater, that's why you'd want to tune in for the TV.
Yes.
Okay. Huh.
And I mean, like, if you put 2 and 2 together, that probably knows how the movies end. Like,
sure. I mean, look, we've been watching.
That is not the end of the story.
Sure. You know, I mean, hey, we've been watching humanity go in this downward spiral in slow motion for like what feels like 8 episodes at this point.
Humanity has declined.
Maybe you could kind of see the trajectory of things from where we're standing.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
no, like that final volume is pretty important. So
I imagine so. Yes.
Yeah, but they've done a lot of that. Like, I think I've been sort of like catching up with ANN's coverage of the anime because they have actually seen, or at least the person doing those recaps has actually seen the film. And like, there's been a lot of original material already. All of episode 0 was original. All of the episode about the girl in their friend group with the glasses was anime original. Well, anime original as in was in the manga, but not in the movie.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I don't think there's that much like actually original stuff that they added from the manga. I'm getting the feeling there are some things here and there that are like they changed a little bit to make them feel a little bit more topical, like, or at least to make them more up to date with how we experience certain themes in the contemporary context rather than how they were experienced back when the manga came out.
Okay.
But like,
interesting. I mean, I could see that. Like 2018 or whatever seems like a faraway time,
right. Just like the use of certain turns of phrase of like, oh, this is how we talk about. Like, for example, I'm not sure if the word genocide is ever used in the manga, or like the signs that say "Stop Genocide." Whereas now, obviously, the word genocide has come back into common parlance, right?
I mean, would that be just a translation choice from?
Maybe, yeah. The president does look like Trump in the manga as well.
God.
Yeah. Well, on that note, it's a pretty powerful show. Like, it's not. I'm not going to say it's enjoyable because it's not meant to be enjoyable. It's not like it's satisfying.
I don't know. Every now and then, Ontan makes a really funny face, and I laugh.
Right.
So
I think like an interesting, important part of the show is also like how the friendship between these characters persists and brings joy even in the worst of times. Like,
a lot of the show is like, what are like, if you're just a normal person, like, what are you supposed to do in these kind of, situations? Like, you still have a life to live, and, if you even wanted to change anything, could you? Right? I mean, it's
Right.
But
also, important question: what game is Anton playing in episode 10?
I mean,
generic shooter.
It kind of just looked like, I don't know,
generic
like
extraction shooter.
Yeah, like Call of Duty with Apex Legends UI, kind of.
Yeah. It must be said, though, Antan would not be caught dead playing a hero shooter. She only plays real hardcore military shooters.
Sure, fair enough. That survived.
That is her vibe.
She's an Arma person.
Yeah. I mean, like, Antan is very specifically supposed to be the, like, super freak otaku who is into, like, Western FPSs and like, army shit.
Like
not anime, but, like, the real sicko stuff.
It's like that girl who dives into the trash, remember?
Chio's School Road.
Yeah.
Chio's School Road, yeah. Taking it back, but yeah. All right. Let's end it there. It's been a long one, but that'll do it for this episode. We'll do our housekeeping. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com. You can go read Iroh's Tsukihime review there. You can check us out on co-host at Glorio. I'm totally not tired, guys. At Glorio on co-host. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and of course YouTube, where you can like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. Tell us how you feel about these shows, or if there's any other shows that we should be watching. Although we're getting pretty late in the season, I don't know if I can pick anything else up, but let us know. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch you next time.
Annyeonghaseyo.